I reported a fake officer to the police. Until the cameras revealed the truth, I alerted the authorities about a fraudulent officer. Then the security footage revealed the kidnapper was my husband, the man I'd shared my life with, a hidden monster. I was about to say no when the child's terrified eyes locked onto mine. She gave a slight nod and silently mouthed, "Say yes, please." Though the guard wasn't watching, something in her desperate expression convinced me instantly. "Yes," I said, "this is my daughter." I pulled her into an embrace, feeling her shake against me. The security guard, a stout man with a mustache resembling someone I once knew, seemed doubtful. "She was hiding in the changing rooms for over an hour," he said. The staff grew worried. "I'm so sorry," I replied. "We got separated and she must have been frightened." I rubbed her back, trying to seem motherly. "Kids, you know how they are." He scrutinized us both. The girl pressed her face into my shoulder, her heartbeat pounding against me. After a moment, he nodded and walked off, but I noticed him speaking into his radio as he left. Time was short. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, I knelt to her level. Her blonde hair was messy in a loose ponytail, and her Pokemon Pikachu shirt was stained. Dark circles under her eyes aged her beyond her years. Her gaze darted nervously, as if expecting danger at any second. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She shook her head. "Someone took my mom. I'm scared they'll come for me too." My pulse quickened, but I stayed calm for her sake. Taking her cold, trembling hand, I said, "Let's go somewhere crowded, all right?" I led her to the bustling food court, where the noise and activity would hide our conversation. The lunch crowd filled every table, blending us into the chaos. I bought her a burger and a soda, then found a spot near an exit. She ate ravenously, like she hadn't had a meal in days. "Who took your mom? What did they look like?" I asked, scanning every face in the crowd. She wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "He said he was a police officer, but he wasn't. My mom knew something was off." "How did she know?" I asked, eyeing a janitor pushing a trash cart nearby. The girl sipped her soda, her hands trembling slightly. "She used to be a deputy. She said his badge wasn't real and his uniform was wrong. The patches were from another district and his belt only had a taser." "What happened next?" I noticed the same security guard from earlier, now lingering near a juice stand, watching us. "We were shopping for my birthday," she said. Mom grabbed my hand and walked fast. She hid me in a dressing room at a department store and said, "That man's not an officer, don't let him take you." Then I heard shouting, and when I came out, she was gone. "When was this?" I asked, pulling out my phone to call 911. "4 days ago," she said, staring at her burger wrapper. "Where have you been staying?" I pushed my shock aside. "In Mom's car," she replied. She showed me where she kept a spare key under the fender. "But I ran out of her snacks yesterday." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back, tough beyond her years. I started dialing 911 when she grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "He's here," she whispered. "The fake officer." My thumb froze over the call button. I scanned the crowd, families eating, teens snapping selfies, a businessman texting by the ATM. "I don't see anyone in a uniform." "He's not in uniform now," she said, nearly hyperventilating. "But it's him. He limps on his left leg and his shoes. Mom taught me to notice details, black loafers with a scratch on the right toe." "Okay, we're going to walk calmly to the restroom," I said, dropping the call for now. Holding her hand, I stood, trying to act casual. She stayed glued to my side, using me as a shield. The food court felt vast, every face a potential threat. As we passed a taco stand, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "That's him. The guy in the navy coat by the sandwich shop." I glanced over and my blood froze. I recognized his profile instantly. "No, it couldn't be." "Are you sure?" My voice was barely a whisper. She peeked around me, then hid again. "It's him. He took my mom. He had a partner, a woman, but I didn't see her face." A woman, my mind reeled. That man was my husband, David Monroe. My body went numb as I tightened my grip on her hand and pushed her into the restroom. The heavy door closed behind us, and I guided her into the farthest stall, my hands shaking so badly I could barely lock it. As I tried to process what I'd seen, the girl pressed herself against the wall, her wide eyes full of fear. My husband was in the food court, and this child claimed he'd kidnapped her mother 4 days ago. I pulled out my phone and typed a text, struggling to keep my fingers steady. "Hey, hun, where are you?" The reply came instantly, "At the office handling stock counts." Why, my stomach churned. I'd just seen him by the sandwich shop wearing his weekend navy coat. The girl tugged my sleeve, whispering that we needed to leave now. He might have seen us. I cracked the stall door, checked the empty bathroom, then peered into the hallway. The security guard, Martin Keller, was heading toward the food court, radio to his mouth. I pulled back quickly. We couldn't go that way. Spotting a side exit near the family restroom leading to a service corridor, I grabbed her hand. We slipped out into a stark hallway smelling of bleach, with signs pointing to the parking garage. My shoes squeaked on the polished floor as we hurried past storage closets and staff lounges. The girl stayed close, glancing back every few steps. We pushed through another heavy door into the parking garage, the air thick with exhaust and grease. I couldn't recall where I'd parked, so I clicked my key fob, hearing my Honda Civic chirp 2 rows over. We ran to it, the girl diving into the passenger seat and crouching below the window as I started the engine with shaking hands. I hesitated, unsure whether to call 911 immediately or drive somewhere safer first. Sensing my indecision, the girl peeked up and said her mother always warned her not to trust anyone in uniform until she was sure they were real police. Her voice was soft but firm, like she'd been drilled on this many times. Given what happened to her mother, it made sense. And I knew David might have police connections. He'd mentioned officer friends before, though I'd never met them, which always felt odd. I decided we needed more information before involving the authorities. I shifted into reverse and pulled out. The girl sat up slightly, saying her mother's car was still in the mall lot, with important items inside. She knew exactly where it was parked. I drove carefully out of the garage into the bright daylight of the surface lot, circling to the far side near the old Armand's boutique entrance, closed for years. She pointed to a weathered silver Renault with a cracked windshield, parked under a broken lamppost. I parked a few spaces away to avoid attention, and she showed me where her mother hid the spare key, a magnetic box inside the rear wheel, caked in grime. She retrieved it with ease. The car smelled musty, with empty chip bags and juice cartons scattered in the back. The girl went straight to the glove box, pulling out a yellow envelope tucked behind the car manual. Inside was her mother's old sheriff's badge from 7 years ago, along with copies of case files on missing persons and fraud cases, and a gas station receipt with a partial plate number scribbled on it. She explained her mother had been investigating something independently before this happened. She'd overheard calls about people posing as officers to detain people with debts or warrants. The receipt was from the day before the kidnapping. Her mother must have noticed something suspicious. I photographed everything with my phone and returned the envelope to its place, locking the car and hiding the key again. Back in my car, I realized we needed real police help, despite the risks of David's connections. I dialed 911, staying calm as I told the operator I was with a child whose mother was abducted 4 days ago. The operator asked our location and if we were safe, instructing us to head to the central precinct downtown, where she'd alert the desk sergeant. The 20-minute drive was silent, the girl staring out the window. The station was an old brick building with narrow windows and a metal detector at the entrance. Inside, it smelled of stale coffee and polish. People sat on benches, looking weary. I explained our situation to the desk officer, who made a call and directed us to a meeting room. A woman in a suit introduced herself as a child victim specialist and took the girl to another room to talk privately, while a detective came to take my statement. I recounted finding the girl at the mall and her story about the fake officer. I mentioned seeing a suspicious man, but didn't reveal he was my husband, needing time to process. The detective took notes, saying they'd check mall footage to identify the suspect, while the girl gave more details to the specialist. About 30 minutes later, a tall man in a charcoal suit entered with a briefcase, introducing himself as Detective Marcus Rossi. His calm demeanor suggested he'd seen terrible things but still cared. He asked me to repeat my story, writing on a notepad as I spoke. When I mentioned the man in the mall, he paused and looked at me. He asked specific questions about the man's height, build, and location. I described the navy coat, the limp, and the girl's immediate recognition. He showed me grainy security stills on a tablet from various mall angles. I pointed out where we were and which way the man faced. A woman in a jacket interrupted, saying she was from Child Protective Services, discussing the girl's temporary foster placement and paperwork. My heart sank at the thought of her with strangers after all this. I argued she should have a say, given her bravery and intelligence. The CPS worker bristled, citing protocol, but Detective Rossi backed me, saying the girl's judgment deserved respect. The CPS worker left to talk to the girl and returned 10 minutes later, softer. The girl had asked to contact me later and wanted me involved. Detective Rossi arranged approved contact, giving me a special phone number. The CPS worker had me fill out background check forms and emergency contact details. Rossi resumed showing me security photos, asking if anyone looked familiar. The girl returned with the specialist and joined me in reviewing them. Then she pointed at one, and my body went cold. It was a side profile of my husband, David, walking past the juice stand 4 days ago, time-stamped 3:08 p.m., matching the girl's story of her mother's abduction. My hands trembled and I couldn't breathe right. Detective Rossi noticed and asked if I recognized anyone. Before I could answer, my phone rang, David's name on the screen. His timing was eerie, as always. I answered, trying to sound normal as everyone watched. He asked where I was, his tone suspicious. I lied, saying I was at St. Laurent Plaza, shopping for my sister's birthday. He said I'd been gone too long and pressed for details. What stores, what items, what prices. When I stayed vague, his voice hardened, saying he'd driven by the mall earlier and didn't see my car. I said I parked by Armand's boutique to avoid crowds. He paused, then warned me not to lie. After hanging up, my hands shook so much I dropped the phone. Rossi picked it up, giving me a knowing look. Taking a deep breath, I admitted the man in the photo might be my husband. Rossi didn't judge, asking practical questions. David's full name, birth date, job. I said he'd done security gigs but never stayed long. Rossi requested footage from today and 4 days ago, focusing on the food court. Within an hour, they had a laptop with video feeds. We saw David in the mall 4 days ago, limping slightly, his loafers scuffed on the right toe. Today's footage showed him in the navy coat, scanning exits like he was hunting. An officer whispered to Rossi, who looked grave. He said an unmarked car outside the station had spotted David's truck circling slowly, as if searching. When the driver saw the police unit, he sped off. Rossi said this suggested David knew I was at the station. He arranged a safe place for me, an extended-stay motel used for witnesses. IT specialists mirrored my phone to track David's calls and texts, giving me a second phone for personal use. They wanted David to think everything was normal as they built their case. That night, the girl called from her foster placement. She sounded scared but said the family was kind, giving her a room with a lock. She recalled more details about her mother's abduction. A rubber and bleach smell, like a warehouse, and metal doors clanging. I noted everything and passed it to Rossi, who immediately sought a search warrant for my home. 3 hours later, while David was at work, 8 officers searched our house. One found a burner phone taped under our dresser, with calls to storage facilities outside town over the past month. My phone buzzed with texts from David, demanding I come home, saying I was overreacting. He later admitted knowing I'd been at the station, claiming a coworker saw my car. The officers photographed his texts. Rossi asked about our finances as I sat on my couch, watching strangers search my life. I mentioned our struggles since David lost his job 9 months ago and finding a box of cash in the garage, which he claimed was from selling equipment. Rossi noted that desperate people do desperate things. He asked about David's security or law enforcement ties. I recalled his temp work at various security firms, never lasting long. The foster home called that afternoon, saying the girl had nightmares about her mother, waking up screaming and asking if I was safe. Rossi helped arrange a visit to retrieve items from her mother's car. I went to the mall lot, where the Renault now had a police seal. An officer let me take a stuffed bunny and a blanket from the back seat. The next morning, I visited the foster home, a small house with a swing in the yard. The girl ran to me, hugging me tightly, and clung to the bunny and blanket, breathing in their scent. We sat on the couch, and she recounted the day her mother was taken, mentioning a water tower with a smiley face they passed before stopping at what seemed like a warehouse. This narrowed the police's search, as only one water tower in town had that design. That night, Rossi called, saying they'd searched 4 storage facilities near the tower. One had zip ties, rope, and a receipt for cleaning supplies under crates, bearing the name Elena Voss, dated 3 weeks ago. Traffic cameras showed David's truck at the same facility 2 nights before the kidnapping. The next day, I returned to the Renault with permission to search further. Under the driver's seat, I found a notebook with dates and locations of other fake officer incidents across 4 counties over the past year, all involving women with children and incorrect badges or uniforms. Rossi cross-checked the notes, finding matching reports but no arrests. He learned David had worked temp jobs for the company handling mall security, giving him access to camera blind spots. The girl gave another interview, recalling the woman with the fake officer had a star-shaped tattoo on her wrist and wrote left-handed. These details were added to the case file. David kept texting and calling, but I ignored him per Rossi's instructions, letting messages go to voicemail. His texts grew angry, then apologetic, a pattern Rossi said was common for someone caught. I stayed another night at the motel, barely sleeping, wondering how I'd missed the signs. The next morning, Rossi said they had enough to arrest David at his workplace that afternoon to avoid complications. I dreaded the neighbors' reactions if this went public. Rossi warned me to brace for media coverage. I checked our shared cloud account, finding hundreds of David's synced photos. Among them were pictures from a bar 5 weeks ago, showing a woman I didn't know, laughing with David. Her left wrist clearly bore a star-shaped tattoo. I sent screenshots to Rossi, who identified her as Alina Voss via DMV records. Police searched her apartment that night, but she'd fled, leaving furniture and trash. Neighbors saw her loading boxes into a white van at 2 a.m. 2 days earlier, with a scratched bumper and a community college parking sticker. The next morning, Rossi said David might try returning home. Officers staked out our house, and around noon, David pulled into the driveway. Seeing the unmarked cars, he reversed and sped off. Officers chased him on foot as he abandoned his truck and fled through a neighbor's yard, vanishing into the woods he knew from jogging. Dogs tracked his footprints to a creek, but the trail ended there. Rossi moved me to a new safe house, a small apartment above a laundromat with barred windows, because David might know the motel's location. The isolation was crushing. I couldn't contact anyone or leave. 3 days later, the Financial Crimes Unit found deposits to David's accounts from 4 shell companies tied to illegal skip-tracing operations, totaling $52,000 over 18 months. I'd thought he was working overtime, not kidnapping for profit. That night, the girl called from her foster home, sobbing uncontrollably. Her foster mother said she had nightmares and woke screaming. I calmed her with breathing exercises her mother taught her, staying on the phone for an hour until she slept. She kept asking for her mother and to go home. 4 days later, Rossi reported finding Alina's van in a downtown garage, plates removed. Blood on the passenger seat matched the mother's DNA from medical records, indicating injury but not death. The trunk held zip ties and duct tape. Garage cameras were spray-painted over. Rossi visited the safe house to review everything. I admitted recognizing David immediately but denying it to myself. He said denial was common in such cases and asked if I'd help lure David out, as he might contact me. The plan was a public meeting with police nearby. Scared but determined, I agreed. They'd wire me and station officers around the meeting spot. David's increasingly desperate text suggested he might slip up. Rossi promised my safety. A victim advocate met me the next day, explaining my rights and ensuring I wasn't pressured. She'd worked with victims for 20 years and gave me her number, saying I could back out any time without judgment. That night, the girl left a voicemail, her voice filling the apartment. She said she was proud of me for helping catch the bad man, recorded with her foster mother's help. Her words hit hard, and I replayed the message, crying on the kitchen floor that this traumatized child was comforting me. The next morning, Rossi confirmed the meeting plan at St. Clair Park, near the playground where David and I met years ago. Officers would pose as joggers and dog walkers. I texted David, hands shaking, asking to meet at 2:15 to discuss our marriage. He replied in 5 minutes, agreeing to talk. Rossi wired a microphone under my shirt and showed me a signal, tapping my right ear twice if I felt unsafe. 2 officers dropped me a block from the park, and I walked to the playground, crowded with kids and parents. I sat on the bench where we'd carved our initials years ago, watching a dad push his kid on a swing, trying to breathe evenly. David arrived 10 minutes late, limping worse, his clothes disheveled like he'd slept in his truck. He sat a foot away, claiming Alina coerced him into extorting people by threatening me. His story shifted. He only drove, then admitted to restraining people but swore he never hurt anyone badly. When I asked about the girl's mother, he glanced around nervously, whispering she was alive, but only he knew where. He'd been giving her food and water, but said she needed a doctor soon and would reveal her location for a lighter sentence. Rossi's voice in my earpiece urged me to keep him talking. I asked why he did it. He grabbed my wrist, saying it was for money for fertility treatments and a bigger home. His grip hurt, and 2 dog walkers shifted closer. Then he released me, standing and saying he knew I was wired because I touched my collar. He ran, but his limp slowed him. 3 officers tackled him near the playground, parents grabbing their kids and fleeing. David shouted that the mother would die without a deal as Rossi read his rights and loaded him into a patrol car. Back at the station, David's lawyer arrived within an hour, demanding a private talk before questioning. Rossi paced outside, anxious about the mother's survival. After 3 hours, the lawyer said David would reveal the location if kidnapping charges were reduced to false imprisonment. The prosecutor negotiated for an hour while I waited in the victim services room, sipping bitter coffee, worrying about the mother. They agreed to 15 years instead of 30 if the mother was found alive, and David testified against Alina and others. He gave an address for a storage unit off Route 27 in the industrial area. Units raced to the scene with sirens. The facility manager opened Unit 48 with bolt cutters, finding the mother tied to a chair, duct-taped and zip-tied, conscious but weak from dehydration. Paramedics started an IV on site, rushing her to the hospital. Rossi followed to take her statement once doctors approved. The girl, with her foster mother and a counselor, reunited with her mother at the hospital. They hugged for 20 minutes silent, as the mother touched her daughter's face and the girl clung to her hand, even during IV adjustments. Rossi learned Alina's debit card was used at a gas station, and the investigation continued to track her down. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories, get more experiences.